Now, most parents wouldn't be willing to go that far. And if you read a book that Koehli recommends called The Incredible Charlie Carew, it's a novel with a main character being a psychopath. And from an early age, Charlie Carew realizes that he's different. And Koehli recommends it as probably the best portrayal of a psychopath in fiction. And Charlie, growing up, can see that he's not quite the same. And what he does is he tries to figure out the correct responses to certain situations. So if he gets in trouble, he learns that the correct response is to pretend that he's crying and to say he's sorry and that he feels really bad. And so from an early age, psychopaths learn these outward cues and the words that we use when in an emotional situation. But the thing is that they're completely acting. They have no awareness of the emotional content behind the words or behind the action. So they may cry, they may be really good at it, they may express joy or happiness or friendship. But these are really just manipulations. They don't feel any of these emotions. And they use these reactions to manipulate us, because that's the way psychopaths manipulate us. They manipulate using our emotions. And again, 9/11 is the perfect example, because the easiest way, as Goering said, to manipulate a person is by using their tendency towards revenge or anger, hatred. You tell a person that they are being attacked, and the person, naturally thinking that the attack is real, is going to want to attack back. And that's just a simple manipulation of an emotional response. And you can get those kind of manipulations from any emotion. You can manipulate towards something that a person wants. So you manipulate them to do something because they'll be rewarded for it. You can manipulate out of fear, out of anger, out of revenge, out of disgust, by turning outsiders or enemies into things that are below human. Then people will become almost psychopathic, as you called it, like psychopathic in effect. They, like the people that would run, the kinds of people that would do the work at concentration camps. They might not be psychopaths, or in the military, but they've been conditioned and put in this environment where they will act psychopathically. And that's another problem we have to deal with, is the tendency.
Abu Ghraib, these Abu Ghraib torture photos that we're talking about, some of these people seem like ordinary American kids that got, set up to do this by the higher-ranking psychopaths, mostly CIA, it appears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And, speaking of fictional portrayals of manipulative psychopaths, I think I recently reread what's his name? The Moor. It wasn't that recently, but you know what I'm talking about. The Shakespeare play, The Moor, Othello. Othello, yeah. And in Othello, the bad guy, Iago, strikes me as kind of an ultimate manipulative psychopath. He tricks Macbeth into thinking that his wife has been unfaithful and plays on him in a really painful way. It's actually kind of a grueling play to experience. But I think that people down through the ages have noticed that there are other people out there like that, often in the halls of power. I think Iago is a kind of a classic portrayal of that. But getting back to the torture scandal, this is another situation where we can ask: will people turn away from this, or will they face up to it? Will we get a kind of a public investigation or commission to publicize this and go after the people responsible, or will it get swept under the rug because people just don't want to face it?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It could go either way. And of course you'll get people, if you look at the criminals involved, chances are you will never get a confession out of them. It was the same way with the Nazis. Trying to get them to admit to what they did is next to impossible. And so unfortunately, people aren't going to get the satisfaction of seeing their leaders fess up to what they've been doing. Now, people may be charged if it ever gets to that point. I'm, skeptical that it ever will, but I just don't see it very optimistically.
We do have the possibility of foreign war crimes prosecutions, as happened with Pinochet. currently there is a case in Spain against Bush for war crimes. And in fact, William Pepper will be on the radio with me in a couple of weeks. Just spent a few weeks working on a case for the Spanish court that's going after Bush. I don't know, Harris. I think there's a chance that one way or another, this is going to come out before too long, or there will be prosecutions. There'll be enough that these guys aren't going to be retiring comfortably. On the other hand, you have to worry about the possibility that they could always pull off bigger manipulations to try to cover up the past crimes. Mm-hmm. Do you think that at what point would they be able to try to do another 9/11 style event? And is that something you see as a realistic possibility in the not too distant future?
Well, I don't know. I definitely think it's a possibility, but there are certain things that I don't know if they weren't planning on or what. Because if you look at if they would have done this 60 years ago, I think they would have had an easier job of doing it. If you look at the example of the Reichstag fire, it's been, 75 years, or close to 70 years since it's happened, and still only recently has there been what people are calling, irrefutable proof that it was a Nazi operation and not the work of a lone deranged communist. And I think that if there would have been something like the internet in the 30s when this happened, you might have had a movement like there is today in the 9/11 Truth movement. And but so it's hard to say, because once the next big thing that happens, you're going to have thousands, tens of thousands of people scouring the internet looking for every contradiction and every lie, and they're going to see a lot of them. And that's what's being done now in the alternative news on the internet. So it'll be harder to get away with, but again, the thing with psychopaths is that they don't really have that kind of inner break when it comes to these sorts of things. Like Bernie Madoff, they'll go to the very end, having no clue that they're the ones that are going to pay. Wojciechowski described it as the germ that invades the body has no idea that it's going to die with the body that it kills. And so if there is another huge attack like 9/11, I think it just might be enough to finally be the straw that breaks the camel's back, perhaps.
Well, one would hope that the non-psychopaths in positions of power, and there clearly are some non-psychopaths in the higher levels of the military and the intelligence community, and I should say the so-called intelligence community and the political establishment, and some of those non-psychopaths must realize that these kinds of things, like 9/11, as spectacular as they are and as successful as they are in certain respects, are really a very, very dangerous and insane path for a nation or an empire to go down. And I would hope that some like the people that supposedly met, the top military officers who met after 9/11 to discuss the fact that it was an inside job and what to do about it. We're hearing more and more about that now from Wayne Madsen as well. But these kind of people would be able to sort of solidify their position to protect these institutions that they work in from psychopaths. That's the hope I would have. Not so much that they're going to tell the truth and expose their psychopathic colleagues right now, but rather that they're laying down the law and saying, okay, you've gone this far, don't do it again.
Well, and I think one of the things that can be done, and that Wojciechowski recommends in the book, is that even if these crimes go unpunished, even if we don't get to the bottom of everything that they've been doing, one of the best things we can do is prevent further crimes of this sort by introducing some kind of screening process for all positions of political leadership. Now, they've started to do this in the business environment. Again, Babiak has been working on this B-scan, or business scan, for companies, corporations to use to screen out possibly psychopathic individuals before hiring. This should be applied to the political environment.
Well, unfortunately, I'm afraid that some of these bureaucracies do it the opposite way. They screen out the non-psychopaths. Wayne Madsen got busted in the National Security Agency after he went after some pedophile sex criminals in the intelligence team. Hopefully, we'll turn that around at some point. This is Kevin Barrett talking with Harrison Koehli of Red Pill Press about Psychopaths in Power.
Psychopaths learn these outward cues and the words that we use when in an emotional situation. But the thing is that they're completely acting. They have no awareness of the emotional content behind the words or behind the action. So they make from psychopaths. And from an early age, Charlie Carew realizes that he's different. And it's Koehli recommends it as probably the best portrayal of a psychopath in fiction. And Charlie, growing up, can see that he's not. Now, most parents wouldn't be willing to go that far. And if you read a book that Koehli recommends called The Incredible Charlie Carew, it's a novel with a main character being shy. They may be really good at it. They may express joy or happiness or friendship. But these are really just manipulations. They don't feel any of these emotions, and not quite the same. And what he does is he tries to figure out the correct responses to certain situations. So if he gets in trouble, he learns that the correct response is to pretend that he's crying and to say he's sorry and that he feels really bad. And so from an early age, psychopaths